I think it's fair to say that expats, like everybody actually in the world, have been affected by the global recession. What is interesting though, from the survey, we've started to see some regional differences. So for example, in the US and also in the UK, expatriates are actually thinking of repatriating or going home because job prospects are far more limited than they were before. In the Middle East, however, it's slightly different. Expatriates are actually considering, well, I'm going to stick around because the boom times were there and they can see the opportunity that exists in the Middle East, and they're willing to stick around for a little while and maybe live off their savings before the next opportunity comes along. The survey gave us a resounding insight that most expatriates were going to stay where they were. What is interesting though is, as a consequence of the recession, expatriates are actually having a little bit of a look at their expenditure and maybe changing their lifestyle slightly to adjust to this new climate that we operate in. Expatriates living in the USA, Thailand specifically, and South Africa have really started to look at their expenditure and have made some tough decisions. Equally, people who are living in the UK have started to see the cost of living increase and so have adapted accordingly to that. Accommodation being the real driver of costs for those people living in the UK. And also in places like France and Spain, people are making decisions around about how much they can actually save. So they're finding that the cost of living is increasing, so they're having less money to save, which is actually a key feature of expatriates work globally, because they do tend to save more. Well, what we're finding is that expatriates in general do tend to look to tomorrow more than most. And the categories that they look to tomorrow in order to invest for tomorrow have slightly changed. So investments in say funds and stuff like that is a lot less than before. So the top 3 vehicles for saving and investing for expatriates are the regular savings account, shares in specific organisations. So expats are seeking out value and choosing certain companies to invest in. And then finally, property still remains a vehicle of investment. What we're starting to see is a real difference between high income earners and low income earners. Low income earners are specifically looking at their day-to-day expenses, and also they're almost definitely saving less for tomorrow than high income earners. The high income earners, the differences we're starting to see from them is they're really cutting back on luxuries, but they're actually starting to increase their savings and investments for tomorrow. So very different behaviours in 2 different sets of income earners. So this year in 2009, we had a number of new entrants come to the top of the tables. Those new entrants were Russia, Qatar and Saudi Arabia. However, the traditional expat locations, which do very well and did very well in our 2008 survey, were hot on their heels. So Dubai, Singapore and Hong Kong were close to the top 2. In the Americas, the 2009 Expat Explorer survey revealed that Mexico, followed by USA, followed by Brazil, were the top 3 locations. And the driver for Mexico's success was that expats in Mexico have more disposable income than expats in the US and Brazil. Moving to Europe, Switzerland and the UK were close to the top. Into the Middle East, Qatar, Saudi Arabia and the UAE. And then finally in Asia, we had Russia, Hong Kong and Singapore leading the way. I think one of the things we've noticed this year more than the previous year is the fact that the expat wealth has moved east. So countries like Russia, Japan, Hong Kong and Singapore, the traditional expat hotspots, are still driving wealth. And interestingly, that the lower expat wealth regions are primarily Central Europe, around Belgium, the Benelux, and also Australia.
Were you surprised by the findings and the overall rankings, such as Russia being number 1?
I have to say I was. But when I took time to think about it and started to think about Russia's influence on the world, particularly individuals, some of whom own high-profile football clubs, it started to make sense. Russia is a country of real opportunity, and global organisations are doing business there and taking expats with them. I think the biggest trend that's emerging from the Expat Explorer survey for 2009 is that people are reviewing their monthly expenditures. So they're looking at potentially some of the luxury items that they have, and they're asking themselves, can I do without this? So for example, maybe it's a second car, or maybe it's help around the house, such as a cleaner or a gardener, to maybe it's only one holiday abroad this year rather than 2 or 3. That is a theme which has emerged throughout this survey.
So what should expats be thinking about in the current climate in terms of managing their own money?
I think there's probably 3 things that they really ought to be thinking about, and these are interactions with their bank or with their financial advisor. I think you need to find a bank who understands you and understands your needs, and so you're almost looking for a bank which is an expert in expats. I think the first thing is, when there's been a significant change in the economic climate, or equally in your own personal economic conditions, you should undertake a review and get some advice. That's really important. It's a very sensible thing to do, and can be very, very rewarding. The second thing is, and I think this is something that really came out in the survey, is review your outgoings. Look at your monthly expenditure and ask yourself, do I really need to have that? Do I really need to spend that money? Can I get by without that? And then the final thing is, continue to have an open dialogue with your bank. Contact is a good thing. People estimate, and it's only an estimation, that there's potentially 190 million expatriates around the world doing business, living and working abroad. Why did I become an expat? Or why did I take advantage of becoming an expat? I think first and foremost it was driven by a professional opportunity. My work took me overseas. That experience, however, was quite incredible. Firstly, on a professional level, I worked with people from other cultures, I worked in different markets, and their skills and their experiences which I can take with me throughout my career. So an incredible investment in me and my professional career. Secondly, from a personal perspective, I think I've had a richer experience as a consequence of that, embracing new cultures, making new friends from different backgrounds, religions, and that really helps you, I think, as an individual to have a broader perspective and a broader insight as to what's going on in the world.